Hi, I'm JC Pohl with Teen Truth on the road here talking with Brittany Neese. Brittany's actually a LMFT supervisor as well as a professional counseling supervisor. So she works a lot to just really help younger therapists basically learn what might be going on for their clients and what they can do to help their clients. Brittany's got a lot of background. I met her at my work over at the Austin Grief and Loss Center. So she's got a big background around trauma, death loss, as well as suicide loss with teenagers. And Brittany, one of the things that we talk about a lot at Teen Truth is how when it comes to suicide and teenagers thinking about suicide is that we all kind of think about it at some point. Like every teenager on campus has negative thoughts at some point that they're going through. And I would say roughly 90% of them, that would probably be true. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But there's that 10 to 15% of the students on campus that maybe have more of a mental health issue. And so a lot of people watching these videos are administrators and school counselors as well as teachers. So I'm just wondering from you, what are some of the things that educators should look for to know that a student might actually have a mental health issue and not just having negative thoughts that are developmentally appropriate for teenagers to be having?
Right. Well, a lot of times we tend to think that if a child is, maybe is depressed, we look for signs, that they might be isolated, might have trouble socially fitting in with friends. Which is definitely something to look for. However, I think what we miss a lot is students who have a lot of anxiety, which can look a lot more sometimes hyperactive, or maybe the class clown, or just something that really is more distracting in the classroom or school setting. But really, a lot of times, unfortunately, what we're seeing more and more of is that students are really hiding their feelings, especially ones that they feel like are not appropriate in terms of any kind of thoughts of suicide, or just not being able to cope. So some things you definitely want to be doing regardless is just to be asking these kids about how things are going on and how they cope with things when maybe if there's a bullying situation or something that's happening that is just really getting them down, how they work through that. A lot of times when people are having suicidal thoughts, they might reach out to others on social media or things like that. We really need to take those pleas very seriously.
Yes.
A lot of times students ask each other to promise not to say anything.
Right.
So we really need to be encouraging them that anytime they hear that kind of information, they bring it to a trusted adult so that we can work with them.
So kind of looking for those warning signs out on social media.
Right.
You had mentioned something to me once that stuck, is that also these warning signs might be kind of hard for us to read because, of course, text messages or Facebook posts, they don't have context always. So
Right.
You had told me a story once of a student maybe that wrote that they needed help, but they just kind of wrote one line sentence, and the person they sent it to maybe didn't really take it to heart.
Right.
Can you give a little bit of example of that?
Sure. Yeah. We don't necessarily express emotion in a legitimate way when
Right.
we're texting or on Facebook, and so I have unfortunately seen students who had reached out and said, I'm just really having a really hard time. I just don't even know what to do anymore. Things like that, to where friends were just like, oh, it'll be fine. It's no big deal. And that student ended up completing suicide. Yeah. And that's not intended to scare us, that information to scare us, but more to open the doorway into having, conversations about if someone is saying things like, I don't know what to do anymore, especially if they're talking about, not wanting to be here anymore, thinking that they'd be better off, if they weren't here. But especially, too, if you're seeing any kind of themes going on that just don't click for that particular student. Those things are important to look at and to be able to ask questions about.
So really trying to dig in a little bit and ask questions is extremely important. One thing that I was wondering, though, as you were talking, is that if we can agree that maybe 90% of the kids are just having negative thoughts, and that's normal and appropriate, and there's kind of this 10% that maybe really has a mental health issue, what's the action step that an educator should take? Say someone watching this video they have a kid in mind. Maybe they've had those conversations. They've talked about coping skills, but things are still difficult in that child's life, and they're heading down that path. Like, what should an educator do next?
Well, I definitely think, and depending on the school system and what's available, to get in touch with a school counselor there, look at resources that might be available. Even having a one-on-one conversation with that student, asking, whether they can help you with something after class, or maybe if you're willing, even saying, maybe we could go grab a bite to eat and just, chat about what's going on. But at the very least, I think just being able to express concern and care for that student, and letting them know that you always want to be someone that they can open up to if they ever are struggling with something and don't know who to turn to, or things just don't seem to be working out, to let them know you're available. That's one of the main things that we can plant that message over and over again about, just being available to them.
I'm available, I'm here, I'm open to a conversation, basically.
Yes.
And then I heard you say the school counselor might be someone to kind of refer them out to. Or I'm sure maybe in your community there's other therapists or counselors, or where you can kind of, I talk a lot on the road about this idea of a tribe. Like, we don't talk about the tribe that much anymore, but it really is that system, that architecture around the child that's so important. So, while you're a caring adult and you're a teacher or you're an administrator in their life, it's also important to pull other people in to kind of build that tribe around the student.
And we, especially if we have a trusting relationship with that student, we can help almost kind of destigmatize that whole notion of counseling being for someone who's crazy, or meaning you can't deal with things. It's more about just getting support. And so being an educator to these children, that's a great way to be able to tell them the value of being able to talk with someone to get additional support. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you.
Right.
It can be a great way to just get through those really difficult times.
I mean, I have people all the time tell me how counseling was like an amazing experience for them, and if they got the right counselor, it just kind of sets them off in a different direction, and maybe that can happen for the teenager that you're working with.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you so much, Brittany, for taking the time to sit down here with me today. If you have any other questions about this issue, I encourage you to talk to your school counselor on campus, or maybe other people in your community. But of course, I'm happy to connect you with Brittany here if you'd like to connect with her. Otherwise, you can visit us at teentruth.net, and you can always connect with us on social media through Facebook and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's been an honor to kind of share this conversation with you. I definitely hope it can help you. All right, you take care. You have a great day.